Hello, everyone. Today I got with me David. He's one of the people that I follow on Twitter. He goes by the handle Latinos for Liberty. And he's one of those people on Twitter that just able to succinctly put together ideas or our perspective of various issues or events in such a short but strong hitting format.
Mhm.
And sometimes a lot of us are perhaps verbose and we can't break it down into a couple of sentences. But you do that really well. You, Bradley
Thank you.
Thomas, and a couple of others.
Thanks.
And
Appreciate
on
it.
your Twitter bio, you say you're proudly blocked by Nicolas Maduro.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you about that and how that went down.
I remember he was honestly, I don't even remember what he was posting about. All I remember is that he was pushing his ideas on his platform, his ideas on his policy pretty much. And I saw a lot of opposition in the comments, and he was I just clearly remember him touting like how proud he was of his socialist policy, blah blah blah. I just commented. I have it saved somewhere. I don't remember the exact wording, but pretty much what I commented was something along the lines of, all socialism causes is misery, and historically has been bad for the people. Honestly, I have to look at. I saved the I screenshotted what I actually tweeted out, but I haven't looked at it in I don't know how long. But so whatever it was that I said, it just kind of made him angry, I guess, and he just blocked me. I was very surprised.
Was that in Spanish that you tweeted?
Yes, that was in
Yeah.
Spanish. Yeah.
So is there and I mean, we're involved in all the libertarian circles within English Twitter. How about in
Right.
Spanish Twitter? What can you say about it?
Spanish Twitter. There are certainly tons of libertarian pages in Spanish. Most of them are not here in the United States. There is a libertarian page in the United States that is geared towards the Hispanic population, and it's more closely tied to the actual Libertarian Party. I follow the individual who's in charge of that account, but it's not something that I can say I've seen a lot of overall. On Spanish Twitter, you're mostly seeing things from Latin America as opposed to just the United States. Yeah, so and my page is more or less geared towards the United States. It's really all about United States. There's not a lot of overlap between their pages and my page, except occasionally I will retweet them because essentially the ideas are the same of libertarianism. It's just the idea of having at least amount of government possible. And so in Latin America, these people, they feel it a lot more than we do because the things that they deal with, they're not as equipped as we are with a history that kind of justifies the resistance that you see in the United States. What United States is predicated on is the idea of freedom and property rights and the defense thereof. So we have a very unique history that a lot of people are moved by, and they live their lives according to these ideals. People will hold on to like the First Amendment, the Second Amendment with all their might, and they don't want to let it go. We don't have that type of history in Latin America. And in Latin America, it's never really been about those ideals. Elections could really just go either way. If there are democratic elections, democracy is just a breeding ground for these ideologies to pretty much come and do what they need to do to sway people to vote for them. It's and they're really good at it too, especially on the far left. They're very good at utilizing the tools that democracy affords us all, and just increasing their cause. So that's really more of what you see in Latin America, and it's for that simple fact that they don't have the same history as us. So the ideals are the same, but what we're actually battling against are pretty unique.
Yeah, democracy seems to set down the perfect conditions for these collectivist, socialistic political parties to really flourish.
Oh
I mean,
yes.
whichever democracy you look at, if there are, let's say, 4 parties or 2 parties in their assembly and their parliament, the majority of them will be left-leaning.
Right. Absolutely.
And the
Yep.
only right-leaning one would be a conservative party that
Right.
barely sticks with its principles.
Yep.
So it
Yeah,
is a
pretty
sad
much
fact.
the conservative party here, it really just reacts to the left. And that's all they end up really doing. They even will abandon their conservative principles, just to react to what the left is doing, or maybe to, seem more palatable to people who are geared towards the left. Especially in terms of the size of government, and even increasingly their scope of like their jurisdiction in our lives. The left, obviously, they want to involve government in all aspects of our lives: our healthcare, our transportation, our jobs, obviously our income, in every way imaginable. And we're kind of tied between two parties that essentially believe the same thing. They all, in one way or another, want to, just put themselves in our lives, and they want to justify, the taxation, with whatever boogeyman that they want to do. They both engage in the same tactics, and like vote for us because we're not the other guy. They want to do this, but really they're not really different in terms of spending, and that's a big thing for conservatism, because if you're not conservative in spending, I mean, that means you're not conservative in the size of governments. And that's very problematic, because, how can you really be conservative if you're okay with having a humongous government? What actually is different between the conservatives and the liberals? From my perspective, from what I see, the only thing is different is how they want to spend your money. It's not really, as much as, how much they want to collect. They're always collecting. They're always coming to agreements in Congress on how much is going to be passed on any type of bill, and these are Republicans and Democrats coming together to agree on these things, and they're insane proposals. So yeah, man. That's that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. Oftentimes, conservative parties just seem to be like a moderate version of their opposing parties.
Right.
Like
Right.
over here, we got in Canada, we got the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is the color of their business cards. That's how it seems
Yeah.
like for most people.
Right.
But oftentimes they're even their platitudes align now. They're both talking about gender issues
Mm-hmm.
and various other uh, you know uh, SJW and PC talking points.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
we were talking about Latin America, and I heard about the growing libertarian movement in Brazil. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you're familiar with this.
Yeah.
We got the Mises Institute here in this or they're in the States in Alabama, right? Which I
Mm-hmm.
consider like the mecca of Austrian economics.
Right.
But now apparently they even got a Mises Institute set up in Brazil.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah,
wasn't aware of that.
yeah, and they invited the president of the American Mises Institute, Jeff Dice, to go and give a speech there, and one of the influential individuals up in that think tank even came on the Tom Woods show
Oh, wow.
and said that people in Brazil are already familiar with how
Mhm.
corrupt the state is.
Right.
So the perspective of libertarianism is just easier for them to adopt.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then from what I know, for what I've heard, is that they have gone recently, with a more right-wing government. So they are, and this government has like loosened certain restrictions, even for carrying weapons as well for self-defense. When he was coming into office, they branded him as the Trump of Brazil. He was that right-wing populist figure. So I imagine they have tasted a lot of new freedoms, but have been bogged down in other areas of their life, in particular with corruption of politicians. From what I hear, is of enormous levels in Brazil, and particularly as it pertains to the courts. From what I hear, there's a lot of judges being fired and judges being hired. Pretty much just putting people in the courts that are going to benefit you as a politician. And those are kind of a dictator moves. So I'm not really surprised that there's a libertarian movement growing in Brazil. I think that when you get to experience the other side of the coin, like if you say if the UK was to now embrace like more right-wing politics, I believe that something in that direction would create a lot of libertarians, because people would literally get to feel the best of both worlds. They'll be able to feel the good and the bad of both parties, and that's pretty much what made me a libertarian. Just because here in the United States we have that pendulum of power that keeps swinging back and forth to Democrat and Republican, and you kind of get a feel for what each side is about. And I like some things that I hear from the Democrats, and I like some things that I hear from Republicans. So for me, those are like the things that kind of steered me towards a more libertarian approach, because I really didn't really feel like I belonged in the Republican Party, which is where I was prior to becoming a libertarian. But I thought that the Republican Party was something that it wasn't. I thought it was a party of small government and low taxes, because that's how it was sold to me. So really, what I was always looking for was a libertarian-like party, and I thought that was the Republican Party. But I was wrong. I definitely was wrong.
Well, we humans, whatever we have, over generations, we just seem to bastardize it.
Yeah.
Like, I think if Thomas Jefferson was to come back to life, he wouldn't want to join that party.
Oh,
Wouldn't you agree?
Right. Oh, yes, 100%.
Yeah, even though he was one of the original Republicans, right?
I'm sorry?
Even though he was one of the original Republicans.
Right. Yeah. And what we've become as a nation is totally antithetical to what the founding fathers actually established, So I think most of them would, be turning in their graves if they knew what was happening here in the United States.
Yeah. And I think that turning point was actually the year of 1913. A lot of books that are written by libertarian authors, that's the year they usually point out, because that's the year when the 16th Amendment came in. It gave the federal government the ability to tax people's income. Yep. And also the Federal Reserve came in that year as well. I believe both under the watch of President Wilson.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us more about your transition from being raised as a Democrat and then going into the Republican Party and then departing from both.
So growing up, I really just automatically identified with Democrats. I don't even know when exactly this happened, but it was just always expected of me. Where I grew up, everybody was a Democrat, and where I grew up was very diverse, and it's very interesting, the demographics, because it was it's just a town. It wasn't a big town or anything, but a third of the people were white, a third were black, and a third were Hispanic. So I really didn't see racism often, like not even the white people. Where I'm from, I hardly ever saw a racist white person before in my life, and and everybody was Democrat, like the blacks, whites, and Hispanics, we were just all Democrats. And I was just so apolitical, like I just accepted that. And, I really didn't know anything about the party. And even in my family, like everybody voted Democrat. And we were never like an overly political family, but we've always voted, and it was always Democrat. And I really never questioned it. So I just assumed that title, Democrat. But like around when I was age, probably like 2021, that is when I decided to get a firearm. And it was really crazy how it all happened, because I honestly wasn't even looking to get a firearm. I was married to a girl at the time who I'm not married to her any longer. But she wanted a dog and I didn't want a dog. So I kind of like put something on the table, because she was way more political than I was. And she was like a left-wing radical. And I didn't even know what that meant back then. But she wanted a dog. I'm like, if you want a dog, I want a gun. and I said that, and I wasn't even like fully committed in that. I was just like saying something so that she would, kind of take that off the table. Like, fine, let's not get a dog. But she was like, okay, you get a gun and I'll get a dog. I'm like, for real? I was like, okay. And that's literally how it happened. Like I bought my first firearm, and I just remember shooting it and just feeling just the power behind it and realizing what it was capable of. And I just felt like, when I was carrying it around, and, when I had to package it up and put it in my car, leaving the shooting range, and whenever I was handling it, when I first got it, I felt like I was handling a bomb. I felt like it could just go off at any moment, and I just treated it with like so much respect, I guess you can say. And I was kind of intrigued by all of that power concentrated in this little object. And it kind of just got me more into looking into what my rights were. And I was reading into the Second Amendment, and I was just like, wow, it's my actual rights to have this, to defend my family. And I just found that to be very empowering. And from that moment on, I started paying attention more to the people who were not so happy about me having that right. I started hearing like their arguments, and I just thought a lot of it sounded kind of crazy. Like they were proposing all these bans on AR-15s, and they wanted to like ban the amount of bullets that you can put in a magazine. And I was living in New Jersey at the time, so it's New Jersey is like very a very blue state, and so they're not gun friendly at all. So I heard like just all of the arguments that possibly existed, and I just thought they sounded crazy, because I was now a gun owner, and now I felt like I knew, like, wait, no, not all gun owners are bad, and then like the ones who are bad, they could not give less of a shit what law you pass. Like if they have committed to murder, like they have committed to this idea that they're going to go murder somebody, like what makes you think that your little piece of gun legislation is going to do anything to sway him? It's like, oh, I can't carry more than 8 rounds, I'm gonna go do this murder with 8 rounds. Like, no, like that's the last thing that's on their mind. And I knew this because I saw the people growing up. Like I saw good people and bad people, and I was like, the bad people don't give a shit about any laws. Like these people are like, these are legit bad people. Like you can pass any law that you want, and it really doesn't mean anything to them, and they don't even know the law. But it's the good guys who do follow the laws, and these are the people that I started seeing a lot at the gun range. And I'm just like, man, these actually are very cool people. They were majority Caucasian, which I felt like I stood out a little bit. But even under those circumstances, everybody was so nice to me. Like it was always such a great experience, and I never had any problems at the gun range. I mean, like nobody typically does. I mean, everybody's armed. It's not like anybody's gonna try to like racially profile you and harm you. Like you're at a gun range. Like if you don't shoot somebody who's trying to harm you, somebody else will. So I just started paying attention a lot to the guns, and how intrigued I was by their capabilities, and how it was my right to bear arms, and how the founding fathers recognized this, and they recognized the fact that these rights did not come from government. They were given to me just based off of my birth as a human. They call them God-given rights. Some people call them universal rights, or rights from the universe, whatever anybody wants to call it. These are rights that are just born, and they are our human rights, And so I just started approaching things from that angle, and I saw that the Republicans were lining up a lot more with what I started, forming myself to be, and to me, it was a no-brainer to just stop identifying with Democrats. I became a registered Republican, and I was like really like all in there, and that was probably around 2014, and I stayed in as a Republican for maybe 2 years, if that. I'm not sure it was a full 2 years, but that's when I was like really focused on politics. And I really didn't feel like I belonged in like amongst Republican, because the things that I cared about, like to them, they really didn't care about it at all, even though it was a real liberty issue, like the issue of marijuana. To me, I think it's insane that a plant would be regulated. I don't know if you're familiar with Larry Sharp, but I remember Larry Sharp would say that we should regulate marijuana the same way we regulate onions. Like we pretty much don't, and because it's just a plant. And I remember I even went through an experience where I had like my first grow, and I grew marijuana. And even more, like during that entire experience, I realized how much this is just a plant. Like everything that I had to learn, I learned from books on how to grow plants. So it was just it's just very eye-opening experience, because to me, I'm just like, man, I'm a free person, and I'm an American, and that's what the Republican Party is supposedly about. But they infuse all of their own biases and religious dogmas, some of them, not all of them. And it translates into legislation sometimes. And so I had a big problem with that. And I had like a growing problem with the sentiment towards immigrants, even illegal immigrants. So I just knew that I didn't truly belong there. And so sooner or later, I think it was in college, somebody mentioned the Libertarian. No, they didn't mention the Libertarian Party to me. They mentioned Ron Paul. And that's when I started looking into him. And the rest is history, honestly, man. I found like a whole new way of thinking where I just felt like it just matched me perfectly. Like this is what I believed my whole life. I just didn't know that there was a movement about it already, you know. So that's where I am today. And I don't know if you saw today, I posted that I got I'm a card carrying libertarian now, and I know a lot of libertarians they don't like the Libertarian Party at all. You know, and I understand, but you know, I'm not gonna vote shame anybody. I hope nobody's gonna vote shame me. But you know, the way that I approach politics now is a holistic approach. I still believe in you know, the philosophies like agorism and having counter economies and things like that. And you know, all of the libertarian ideals, I hold them as my North Star, and I just believe in just pursuing those ideals with pragmatic solutions according to where we are now in 2020. Because I see a lot of people who say like, oh, you shouldn't vote at all because, you know, you're giving power to the system, or they'll say, you know, like, don't vote libertarian because why are you voting for rulers? You know, like I understand the sentiment and trust me, I believe in those sentiments, but I don't believe that those are winning strategies. Like I believe that that's the type of mentality where you'll just believe what you believe all your life and nothing will actually materialize. You know, so I'm trying to take a more pragmatic approach, and that's just right now. You know, I might just come to the realization that it's just never going to work. You know, just after being in it so long, I don't know. I'm just really just playing it by ear. But that's the route that I'm taking right now is with the Libertarian Party. I'm hoping that, you know, it can actually within the next few years put forth decent candidates and you know, and hopefully get some more recognition.
Was it watching Ron Paul in the debates that got you interested, or?
I actually, when the debates were going on, I knew nothing about politics. So like I did watch the debates, but I watched them years later, you know. So but yeah, that certainly played a part in it, because to me, I saw this guy that was slaying everybody with these awesome ideas, you know, and so that kind of, I felt like it gave more credibility to the movement, you know. So it definitely played a major role.
But you were talking about how Republicans, sometimes they talk about liberty, but oftentimes when these people talk about liberty, they're only concerned about their own liberty.
Right.
If other people are engaged in some activities that they don't like, they want to prohibit them from being able to do that. They don't want to extend that to everybody, you know?
Right.
Us libertarians, we want to, you know, consistently apply the non-aggression principle.
Right.
And if I have the liberty to do X, Y, and Z, you know, as long as it doesn't harm anybody else, then the same should apply to everyone else as well.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that's important I believe that's important for Republicans to understand, because I feel like when I'm speaking with them, they feel that if you're advocating for the liberty of everyone, that you're co-signing with everyone. You're co-signing everyone's beliefs, and you know, that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, for example, like the Libertarian platform has sex work as one of the issues on there, and the Libertarian platform says that they don't believe in you know, using force, you know, and imprisoning people for prostitution and things of that nature. This is not something that I would go out there and personally fight for, like with all my might, you know, because I don't live like that type of lifestyle, but I'm also not ever going to vote against it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing that the Republicans do, is that they actively try to vote against other people. And I think that that's where the problem is, because, you know, if you don't believe in freedom for your ideological opponent, then you don't believe in freedom at all. You know, because then you could accuse them of the same thing, which it's very easy to do. The left does not believe in freedom, you know, especially freedom of speech. The Democrats used to own that title not even that long ago. They were the party of free speech. And now what they're morphing into, just with this growing influence of the far left in the Democrat Party, is they're completely hostile to the idea of free speech, you know. So yeah, man, it's just it's crazy.
Yeah, within the right, there's you know, a significant number of people who are focused on the issue of firearms. And within the left, there are a significant number of people that are focused on the issue of cannabis legalization or the legalization of drugs in general, perhaps the war on drugs,
Right.
that they're focused on. So if those two viewpoints or vantage points are able to align, then they find themselves in libertarianism, you know?
Right. Yeah. And
But
often
I guess for a lot of
that's the case.
people, it's quite a leap for them to make. You know?
Right. Right. Yep. And you know, and even for gun rights, you have to become a slightly more radical person in the Libertarian Party, because amongst Republicans, they are not fervently for, you know, your right to bear arms. It's very, very lukewarm. And you know, just the fact that the ATF exists, and it has existed under every Republican president since its inception as well. You know, it just really paints a clear line on who's really about gun rights and who, you know, really is just about gun control. You know, and both parties are certainly in favor of gun control. Because they, you know, there's even legislation that Republican-backed, you know, interest groups like the NRA are, you know, are actively part of. You know, they even suppress the rights of certain people to bear arms. Like in California, when Ronald Reagan was governor, the Black Panthers came up to the State House armed, and I guess they didn't like that. And Ronald Reagan, he passed the Mulford Act, which was pretty much banning you from being able to carry weapons in public. You know, and that was right after what when the Black Panthers had demonstrated. So they have literally like ended freedoms because of, you know, their preconceived notions of other people. And you know, it's for a Republican to do that, for Ronald Reagan to do that. This is like, you know, the Republican God for them. You know, for Ronald Reagan to do this, and for the NRA to co-sign that, it's just, it's crazy, man. The people don't realize how lukewarm the right is actually on gun rights. And if you actually are about gun rights, only the Libertarian Party has an actual pro-gun platform. And then, you know, the Democrat Party is just the total opposite. I'm not sure if you've seen their platform, but it's radical. For America,
Yeah.
it's radical. It might not be radical for Canada.
Oh, they're getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, but we got some people over here, especially in the province of Alberta, and they're sick and tired of how Ottawa is governing them, or governing the country, and they think it's unfairly structured. Like there's something called equalization payment they take from the provinces that are doing well off financially. They take from those provinces and give to have-not provinces. You know, provinces that are struggling financially. So oftentimes they end up getting screwed in this deal. So there's like a separatist movement growing in this province. But a stupid idea that they suggest is to leave Canada and join the States.
Wow.
You know, I think, you know, I'm like, do you really want to do that and then join up with Bernie Sanders and AOC and all the rest of them? Do you think that's a better outcome at all? Probably not.
No, definitely not, man. Yeah, that's wild. I'm not too familiar with like politics in Canada, but that certainly is interesting. I didn't know that.
And regarding the Libertarian Party, you now support George Jorgensen.
Yes.
But when the race started off, which candidate seemed appealing to you? Was it Jorgensen from the beginning, or was it somebody else?
No, honestly, Jorgensen was I paid very little attention to Jorgensen throughout the whole race. Honestly, the one that I was most focused on was Jacob Hornberger. Jacob Hornberger, to me, was very ideologically consistent in what he believed. And he was kind of like a no-nonsense guy. And maybe that was the biggest strike against him, because he was not about, you know, making little reforms here and there. He's about axing everything that doesn't work. You know, like Social Security doesn't work, completely end that system, you know, whereas, you know, everyone else is talking about phasing it out, or maybe, you know, lessening the burden that it causes Americans, you know, whatever, making it optional. But no, Jacob Hornberger is like completely ended for the borders, completely open borders, like absolutely no type of protection whatsoever. And I actually agreed with him 100% when he was pushing these ideals. But the truth is that in the United States and even amongst libertarians, it's just really not a winning strategy at all. And I think that and this is kind of where I separate. There's like a like a little battle inside of me. It's like the ideologue is like battling with the pragmatist within me, because yeah, I believe everything that Jacob Hornberger was saying, but do I believe that he can actually make that happen? I don't think so. And I think that if he were to run on the libertarian ticket, that would have been a major strike against him, even amongst libertarians, because there are many libertarians that support borders. So I'm not sure if you've seen, but I proposed an immigration plan that kind of what I believe it does is that it increases the most amount of freedom for the most amount of people, while still being able to protect your borders. And I kind of address all of the fears, the common fears that I hear. Like people say that they're a leech on the welfare states, which is true, and these are things that you have to acknowledge. If you want to be honest, like the American people are getting robbed of their money, and if anybody has a say, the American people should be able to say whatever it is that they believe on the subject. Like, yeah, like these people are coming and they're leeching off of the money that we paid into. I understand that concern. So in my plan, I kind of made it like I made illegal immigrants ineligible for welfare completely. And the only way that you can do that is by ending birthright citizenship. And so that's what I propose, because to me, I'm like, the object here is not to be able to vote and all that. The object here is for people to come here and be able to access opportunity, and that's why people come here. So that's what I propose, is just, let them come here and let them be ineligible for welfare. And there's a lot more moving parts to my plan, but that essentially is it. And so that's kind of very different from what Jacob Hornberger was proposing. He was like, no, end it completely, have open borders the way that we have open borders between states, And I'm like, man, that's cool, but I don't know if it'll fly with the American people, honestly. Not in 2020, at least.
So this idea of yours, did you make that input into the Libertarian Party, or how are you?
No, I haven't. I just deposited that idea to the universe, and see what happens if it gains steam. I bring it up every now and then, but I haven't actually been in contact with the Libertarian Party, like to provide any like actual useful information to them. Someone did reach out to me, and they gave me the contacts to like join their WhatsApp chats and things like that. But I have yet to actually communicate with anybody from the actual party.
So when what's his name, Hornberger, when he I think he came up as a runner-up, right, second place.
Right. Yes.
Were you disappointed to find out about that result?
I was very disappointed, man, because I really like this guy. And, he has that FFF.org. It's I can't even remember what it stands for.
Freedom,
the Future of Freedom
Foundation.
Yeah, something along those lines. But I would go on his site, and man, like if you go on his website, like you will find tons of great information. I was even reading like the books that he's written. I didn't read all of it, but I read most of it, of one of his books that he wrote on JFK's assassination, and it's just mind blowing, man. Like the things that you hear from this guy, I'm honestly very surprised that he's not more well known or even more revered within the libertarian movement. But he certainly is it was certainly disappointing to see him not get the nomination, man. Because when it was given to Joe Jorgensen, I just felt that felt kind of odd, to be honest. It didn't feel natural. I felt like it wasn't the will of the people, but I could be wrong, But so I kind of had to warm up to Joe Jorgensen.
And especially when you watch the debates, you could see the contrast between how Hornberger were answering the questions and how the rest of them were answering the questions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would make some references in Vermin Supreme. We have no idea what they were talking about. What do you think of the idea of Ludwig von Mises? And Vermin would respond, "Ludwig who?"
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So. No, he opened my eyes to a lot of things, man. Just even his defense of his stance on the border is it's amazing because I never really thought about it the way that he thought about it. And it made so much sense where he said that the borders that we have, our immigration controls, are socialist immigration controls that are predicated on the idea of central planning. And it's essentially we're trying to plan, in this ever shifting labor market, we're trying to plan how many people are going to come in from where, and pretty much that's, it comes with all the pitfalls that you would get from any system that is based on central planning. If you just take a look at our borders, I mean, it's a seriously broken system, but it's not that that it's broken. It's just that that is the way that these systems naturally. That is a natural phenomenon for these systems. And he mentioned the idea of it being planned chaos, and he got that from one of Ludwig's books. So, it was just a very eye-opening experience, man. Like the way that he broke it down, it just made a lot of sense to me. And, you see all the pitfalls of central planning on the immigration debate, because you get this whole police state attached to it. We have we have ICE, the Immigration Customs and Enforcement Agency. We have, raids on ranches along the border. We have checkpoints on our highways. It really violates the rights of the people. And it's really all in the name of security. But, just our whole foreign policy and the way that we view immigrants, I believe, is just very skewed, man. And it's really a way that governments would rather you think of others, because that's how they justify these immigration controls that we have, as they kind of just scare you, like, all these people on the other side of the world hate you because you're free, and like I highly doubt that that's why they hate us. It probably has something to do with all of our bases in their country and us bombing them perpetually. So yeah, man, the way that I see things, I could definitely credit it to Jacob Hornberger. I believe that he's just revamped my whole way of thinking as it pertains to immigration. So he was just very monumental and just me putting together my beliefs. So to see him lose, man, it was just very disappointing.
And actually, I never heard the guy before.
Yeah,
he came on Tom Wood's podcast and Dave Smith's podcast. And they were basically endorsing him. And then I checked him out, and I'm like, "Holy crap, this guy's for real!"
Yeah, yep. And he's consistent, man. He's been running the Future of Freedom Foundation since '89, I believe. And he's consistently been putting out ideals of liberty. And there's not a whole lot of people that you can say that about. So yeah, man, he definitely deserves a lot more. I hope he considers running in the future, honestly.
So after your disappointment with the results, how did you go from there to then accepting Jorgensen as the candidate? Because I don't think Tom and Dave, I don't think they followed along and endorsed her.
Right. So for me, I really had to warm up to her. When she became the nominee, and Spike Cohen, the vice president nomination, I just followed their accounts. I'm like, all right, so they're the nominee. Let me follow them and see what they're about. And honestly, I like her platform. It's not perfect, but man, when I compare it to Trump's or Biden's, I mean, it's heaven. It's just insanely different in many ways. She's actually about cutting spending and cutting agencies, and she wants to cut ATF, DEA, Homeland Security. Like, these are all agencies that are really just exercising so much power over Americans, man. People think it's crazy, like, that we even want to end the Department of Homeland Security. But we didn't even have a Department of Homeland Security prior to 9/11. And a lot of people don't remember that fact. I told people at a family barbecue that I was at not too long ago, and they didn't believe me. I was like, man, you guys are older than me. Like, you don't remember, like, when this agency came into existence, and they just exercise so much power over the people that it's just, I don't see the justification. So it's just, they're just worlds different. So when I saw a platform like Jo Jorgensen, and just listening to her message and hearing the things that she's about, she's excellent on the Second Amendment, and to me that's very, very important. To her, all gun control laws are unconstitutional, and it's true. I mean, and that is the limitation that our founding fathers put on the government. Any infringements on people's right to bear arms is unconstitutional, and it violates our rights that are innate within us. So for her to take that position that is radical, because it goes even much further than what the Republicans want. Like, people think that the NRA needs to be ended because of how dangerous they are. Like, no, like, libertarians are not NRA fans because NRA compromises way too much. Like, the NRA is nothing compared to like the gun owners of America. The gun owners of America, they're a no nonsense group. They don't believe in compromising in any way, shape, or form. And that is the libertarian stance on guns. There should be zero gun laws, and because that is the way that is written in our Constitution. So Jo Jorgensen believes this. So this is a major point in her favor. Is something that's very important to me. It's important to a lot of Americans as well. Anybody who is truly about guns would love her message. But the natural fear of voting for her is that voting for her is for no reason, because she's definitely not going to win. So it's hard to get support under those conditions. But that is what did it for me. It's her stance on guns, her stance on the role of government, and just rolling back regulations and lowering taxes. She put out something today that says that it was like a meme that she put out talking about the fair tax, like a fair tax. And I saw what her fair tax was. It was 0%. So I was like, all right, so stuff like that is music to my ears, man. And so it's just an easy decision for me. I no longer want to continue feeding this beast, this duopoly that we're stuck with. I want to do something that is going to affect some type of change. And maybe it's naive of me to think that voting can actually change things. But to me, like I said, it's part of a holistic approach. I'm happy to try to advance liberty in other arenas of life as well. But I don't want to leave out trying to work from within the system as well. And I believe that Jo Jorgensen is palatable. She's intelligent, and I believe she's the better option of everyone running.
Mm. A couple months ago, she put up tweets and posts on Facebook regarding BLM.
Yes,
and some people thought it was a little too what's it called? Favoring of the BLM, so to put.
Right.
She said something along the lines that we shouldn't be passively anti-racist, but actively anti-racist, right?
Right.
And some people thought, oh, okay, she wants to now utilize the mechanism of government to promote her cause or something like that. What did you make of that development?
Honestly, when I read that, I was very surprised, because I think the wording was it's not enough to not be racist. You have to be like anti-racist or something like that. And I already knew that was like leftist language. And to be anti-racist is it's pretty much like ties in to like the whole thing between critical race theory and all of this intersectionality and this whole totem pole of like who's like more untouchable than the other, and the white people are all the way at the bottom. So it's just that anti-racism ideology could get very extreme. So I know why people were coming at her, but I don't have any evidence whatsoever to believe that is what Jo Jorgensen meant. Because to me, I can say it's not enough to be racist. You have to be anti-racist. I could run on that slogan, and me being anti-racist, it just what it translates to is chopping down the federal government that is encroaching upon Blacks and Hispanic lives. Like in particular, the war on drugs disproportionately affects Blacks and Hispanics as opposed to whites, even though across the board everyone does drugs the same statistically. So something like that, I can consider that institutional racism, and something that I'd be happy to end if I were empowered to do so. That could be seen as anti-racism. And that's honestly what I understood it as when I saw that Jo Jorgensen said that. But I know a lot of people didn't. Like, to them, like, now she is a communist and she's co-signing the BLM agenda, which wants to destroy the nuclear family and all these things. I seriously don't believe that is anything remotely what Jo Jorgensen is about, just based off her platform alone. Far left ideologies require enormous governments, and I don't see that at all on Jo Jorgensen's side. And she's also clarified several times that she does not support the organization itself. She was supporting the slogan Black Lives Matter. So I didn't get hung up on it, honestly. And honestly, I was very surprised and kind of disappointed to see so many people just disavowing her now over, a tweet gaffe that she had. Because I think that's kind of insane. I see that's what the left does with Trump, and I'm like, man, I used to just laugh at the leftists, but now I'm like, I have to laugh at people that under normal circumstances, I have a lot of respect for them, but there's a lot of people that they were kind of very triggered by this tweet, and I just didn't understand it, honestly. I just felt like that was very weird to see amongst libertarians, especially because I mean. Maybe people do really believe that Jo Jorgensen believes that message. I just don't know what they're basing it on, because based off her platform, it is nothing, there's nothing that is far left about her platform.
Now, David, we talked, you mentioned that you read some of Hornberger's books. I also wanted to ask you, what other authors, libertarian authors, influence your perspective?
Well, definitely Murray Rothbard. I mean, I take a little bit from everywhere. I can't say that I'm you have people that are 100% like Rothbardian, or people who subscribe strictly to Mises. I take a little bit from everything. And one of the things I read from Rothbard that was very monumental in how I view the state was his book, The Anatomy of the State. I'm not sure if you've ever read that, but it's a quick read. Yeah, it's a quick read, and it really just revolutionized the way I see the state, man, because it gives you just a clear painting of who is who, just the whole idea of patriotism. I posted on that earlier. I used to see it as something that was totally different than what patriotism actually is. What these governments paint patriotism to be is that you support, this government and the president and the military, and that you're patriotic if you pay your taxes, blah blah blah. And now that I know what I know, it just sounds so crazy that this could be passed off as patriotism, because this is really this is something that is pushed by governments, and and it's just to build allegiance to the government, and they even had us pledging allegiance every day in school, which now as an adult I'm like, holy shit, that is weird, to see a whole classroom full of people standing up with their hand on their heart and they're pledging allegiance to the flag. And I'm just like, man, that, I know it sounds patriotic and wholesome, but when you actually look at it objectively, that is strange stuff to look at, man. It looks very cultish, and you're pledging allegiance to an ideal that these politicians are disrespecting on the daily basis, So I'm like, why am I pledging allegiance to this flag when these people that are working on behalf of the people, apparently, from what I'm told, these people are just walking over the whole ideal of liberty, so. Yeah, man, it's crazy the role that the government plays in our thinking, man. And it was The Anatomy of the State that kind of opened my eyes to that. Even as it pertains to war, we're conditioned to think that other people hate us and they want to go to war with us, but really the ones who are at war are the governments, and. But the way that it's painted is that we have to go and fight for our country, out in the Middle East, where nobody's even doing anything to us. But we have to go out and fight for our country, and and that is being patriotic. And now looking at it, I'm like, holy crap, that is crazy nonsense, man. Because our freedoms aren't under attack by anybody in the Middle East right now, and and that whole view of us fighting for our country is just really exposed in that book as well. So it just kind of gives you a sober reality check, man, on what is what. And it kind of just helps you remove your biases, and you just, read it. And I see the roles of the university and how they play, in sustaining the state as well. These are things that make so much sense, because I'm like, man, look at all these huge government ideologies, let's say, like the far left ideologies that require enormous government. These are all being pumped out by universities. And I'm like, who stands to benefit the most from that type of indoctrination? It's the state. The state is empowering themselves, and they got the credibility of the professors behind them. So and these things, I never really looked at them that way before until I read on Rothbard a little bit more, and in particular that book. So definitely one that I highly recommend, because a quick read is like 50 pages, and it just provides just so much information, man. It's like a little bit of information that opens your mind to so many things. You know what I mean? So definitely played a crucial role in how I interpret things today.
Yeah, I mean, the academia is really just an arm of the state.
Yeah,
we don't seem to, we don't seem to look at it that way often.
Right.
But perhaps it's always been the case. Because, I mean, that's who they're funded by, right?
Right.
Well, for the most part.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the States, I guess you guys have a lot of private universities.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, they get a lot of grants from the government.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say things that are antithetical to what your employer thinks, then he would want to get rid of you, right?
Right.
So he would, first of all, seek out those who think alike and promote ideas that are favorable to himself.
Right. Absolutely. And here in the States, and I'm sure it's the same in Canada, in exchange for pumping out these other ideologies, what these professors get is from the state is academic tenure, where they have a job for life, and it comes with enormous prestige. And you just really see who's scratching who's back here. It's like, we're pumping out these big government ideologies, and you guarantee us a job for life with all the prestige that comes with being a full-time professor at a university. So yeah, man, like you it's just like a very you see things with much more clarity, man, when you understand what the tools of the state that the state uses to sustain itself.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
What were some of the other books that got you interested?
Let me see.
What is Government Under Our Money? Have you checked that one out?
Wait, which one is it?
What is Government Under Our Money by Rothbard?
I haven't read that one yet. No. Man, you're putting me on the spot here. I can't even remember right now.
So no problem. But how do you challenge the libertarians who choose not to vote?
I don't.
Do you try to encourage them, or?
I'm sorry?
Do you try to encourage them, or?
What I do is I just put out my reasons for what I do. There's libertarians that I have tremendous amount of respect for, like Eric July. He's like another like no nonsense person, no nonsense libertarian, and he doesn't vote at all. And to me, I don't subscribe to that belief. I think that it's a missed opportunity. But I really don't. I don't push any manner on how you spread libertarianism. I really don't believe in pushing that on anyone. The way that I do it is through pragmatic solutions. Prior to this, I was a complete ideologue, so I didn't believe like that voting was really necessary, or that it was even something that would cause change. I was just like literally like an ideologue. Like I believe that the government was unnecessary and that we can govern ourselves, and I do believe that. But I just don't see how we can transition from what we have now to that in my lifetime. And I want to be free in my lifetime, so I've changed my mode of thinking and just the way that I will, and how I choose to go about spreading libertarianism, and how I choose to use the tools available to me, like voting. So like previously in 2016, I didn't even vote libertarian at all. I voted for Trump in 2016. and that's because of how much I hated Hillary, and I still do hate Hillary. Like, oh my goodness, I believe she's the devil incarnate. But Trump, he was to me was the one who I believed at the time who could take the victory. Like, if anyone, I didn't believe that Gary Johnson could actually pull it off, and I knew, and I was, obviously I was right. He could not pull that off, and Joe Jorgensen probably won't either. But one thing that I am very ashamed of is that my vote contributed to Donald Trump, and all of these big, government spending bills that are getting passed to deal with coronavirus. They're insane, man. And even prior to that, he was signing spending bills that were just completely insane. That even he acknowledged it in one of them, where he said, "I'm never going to sign a bill like this one again." And of course, he did, like probably like 3 more times after that. So Trump, to me, like back then, I believe that the way to preserve liberty was to vote Republican in that election, and I do regret doing that. I actually, even though I knew, even in hindsight, knowing that Gary Johnson lost, I wished my vote actually would have went to Gary Johnson instead, because what I believe now is that, yeah, we're not going to win in this election most likely. But every election, I want to see more progress and more people voting for the Libertarian Party until we can get to the spot where we can actually debate on the presidential stage with Republicans and Democrats. That is the road that I'm taking. If somebody would have told me to vote Libertarian in that election in 2016, I would have laughed at them, and I'm sure that by me saying that I'm voting for Jorgensen, there are Libertarians that are in different stages than me, and they're laughing at me, so that's why, like, I don't even go the route of trying to encourage one way to advance liberty or another. I just simply just say what I'm doing, and that's the way that I'll probably continue doing so as well.
Now, even though you may feel complicit in getting Trump elected and then him enacting a bunch of policies that we may be opposed to, but there is a distinction to be made between candidate Trump and President Trump, don't you think?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Actually, Peter Schiff consistently points this out.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the things that President Trump was saying before being elected in the rallies, in his rallies, I mean, like saying the government stats are fake, unemployment numbers are, more so around 20 to 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's become president and he's embraced those exact same numbers.
Right.
Followed the same trend of governance as Obama was doing.
Right. Yep. Yeah, no, and the things that he was saying, like a lot of them resonated very well with me, in particular of exposing just how bad Democrats were. Like, to me, that was music to my ears at that time, because by that time in 2015, when he was saying all of these things, I was fervently against Democrats. I was like on fire at that time. So when I had Donald Trump over here saying like, oh yeah, like if I'm in jail, like I'm sorry, if I win the presidency, you're going to be in jail, talking to Hillary Clinton. To me, that was music to my ears, because that's government accountability. You know what I mean? Like, this is literally the government holding itself accountable. This is the only way that it's going to manifest, by one party doing it against another, because parties don't do that to themselves. So that was like very exciting for me. But like now, like we see, like Hillary Clinton is still walking free. Everybody who even spied on Trump's campaign is still walking free. Like the only ones who have ever gone to jail are people with ties to Trump, and it's because the Democrats had the balls to prosecute them. But I don't see anything happening from Trump. I'm like, nobody is going under for anything in government. So it was just one big, huge disappointment. And then the huge spending bills, completely different tone from what he was saying. I already knew that Mexico wasn't going to pay for that wall, because I'm like, how are you going to make them pay for that wall? So I wasn't counting on that. But, it turns out Americans are paying for that wall. So, definitely the candidate Trump is very different from President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, he kept saying we're going to drain the swamp when he went over to Washington.
Right.
But it seems more like he's now submerged in the swamp.
Oh, yeah. and one of his Supreme Court nominees, Brett Kavanaugh, the one he actually appointed, he is the literal embodiment of the swamp. He's just like a clean-cut guy, very good at what he does. But he was also one of the authors that helped pass the Patriot Act that we enacted after 9/11, that gives the government the ability to spy on Americans, and thank God to Edward Snowden that we found out that that's actually what they were doing with that program. They were spying on Americans. So Brett Kavanaugh is now on the Supreme Court, so that means that so many more things that are antithetical to liberty can now happen with his votes, depending on the issue. So that certainly wasn't a good example of him draining the swamp. To me, like, he just clogged it up even more with more trash, because those are lifetime appointments. His initial the nominee that he appointed first, what's his name, Neil Gorsuch. He is somebody that I actually highly respect. I would love, everyone on the Supreme Court to be a Neil Gorsuch. Trump truly got that one right, but with Brett Kavanaugh, he definitely went wrong there.
Now, I see you also tweeting or retweeting somebody regarding education. I was wondering if you had children yourself, and how you're going about their education, trying to prevent them from indoctrinated with status dogma.
Yeah, so I do have children. My children right now, they're not in school. Like, I have a 4-year-old. She just missed the cut to be in kindergarten. So we were going to put her in a preschool, but since we're home now, we're not doing that, because preschool for us is not free. Because of our income, we don't really qualify for anything that is that's free around where I live. So we're not putting her anywhere. We do have a 9-year-old who she is doing a remote learning, but she's my stepdaughter. So she is actually going to school in a different state as me, and she's doing it from where we're located. But it's the school that her dad put her in, so she is getting public education, unfortunately. And so a lot of things that I see when she's, when she comes through with any hurdles that she has with remote learning, which are many, because she needs to be way more hands-on in order to learn, and now she's pretty much confined to remote learning. So when I see all of these things, and then the politicization of the topics that are studied, I already can see if her staying in public education is going to be problematic for the future, because now her brain is being crafted to think a certain way, and that is only possible with public education, man. For government to have that authority and what gets taught, that's a powerful tool for government that I believe that they should not have. That's what I retweet that guy Corey DeAngelis. He dedicates 100% to education, and I love people like that they just dedicate to one topic. And so his whole life has been about education, and he's written many peer-reviewed journals as well. So he's just somebody that I hold to a high esteem in this arena of education, and his ideas, I believe, are revolutionary. This is one of those other pragmatic solutions that I believe in taking, because he doesn't take a libertarian approach. For him, he's saying, let's stop funding public schools and instead of giving money to these public institutions, let's give the money directly to the parents so that they can send their kids to whatever school they want to send them to. So to me, that's not a libertarian solution, because you're still redistributing other people's money to pay for education. But it, to me, is a step in the right direction. So that is where my pragmatism comes into play, where I believe that if there is going to be either less spending, or if there's going to be a removal of power in any proposal, then it's something that I'm willing to consider. And that idea, I believe, that is very, very important, because it removes a lot of power from the federal government. Because now, if you're no longer funding public institutions, and you don't have to worry about these teachers unions that have their grip on education and what is taught, if you can take that power away from governments, you're pretty much that's a big jab in the side of governments, because now literally that is the tool that they use to convince us that we need them, and it's through education that these kids are coming out of school with all these ideas that are very related to what you would hear from Bernie Sanders. You know what I mean? And I'm just man, Bernie Sanders, To him, everything is a human right except for human rights. There is no right to free speech or the right to bear arms. For him, you have a right to education, a right to housing, things that a humongous government can administer. He likes the rights that the government can give you. If the government can't give it to you, he's not interested in it, So, and those types of kids, that's what I'm seeing a lot amongst the youth. And, these are ideas that are being implanted in them from education. So if we can take that power away and, even if we don't decrease the funding at all by a penny, it's at least worth it to strip that power away from government. To me, that's a step in the right direction. So I think that's $1 million idea. On average, we spend about $15,000 per child per year in the United States on average. So if we instead gave that money to the parents, like for each child that they have, per year, give them a check for $15,000, let them go and shop around to see what school most aligns with them, and let them decide the future of their child. Or even for all of the churches, all of the synagogues, all of the mosques, they all now have an incentive to create their own school as part of their community, because now all of their congregants' children have a $15,000 check. So I believe that is the way to decentralize just that power that government currently has. And I think that's a very important one to decentralize. So that guy that I retweet all the time, I do so just because I believe that he has it right. I believe that is going to be the next step, because I don't think that a libertarian can come in and just end the Department of Education altogether. Or to end public schools altogether. I don't think that there's going to be a libertarian way to go about doing that as the next step. I think the next step is going to be just the removal of government power over our children's lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess this COVID lockdown has given the opportunity for parents to see that perhaps their kid don't got to attend school 5 days a week, 9 to 5 or 9 to 3 every single day, and be taught and transmitted this volume of knowledge, or
Right.
or supposedly, and perhaps now parents are even considering experimenting with their children's education,
Right.
as in many provinces and perhaps even in some states, teachers are now demanding higher salaries and higher wages. They don't want to work. They want
Right.
they want to go out and protest.
Right. And those are problems that could be solved by implementing those ideas that we were just discussing, giving that money to the child as opposed to the institution, because now you have what Corey DeAngelis puts out. He calls it the idea of micro schooling. I think that is a genius idea. So pretty much if you have, let's say, for example, if the average check is $15,000, let's just say you have 10 children and they all have $15,000 each. This could be parents who came together and pooled their money together. And, so it's just a group of people who are like-minded. They have the same educational goals for their children. They pool their money together. If there's 10 children, that's $150,000 right there in that room. So they can find a teacher of their choosing that is certified, who will be the teacher of their children. And that teacher could, they could either rent a spot or they can separate a part of their home and utilize that for teaching. And they would have $150,000 to work with for space and for materials, and they would still have a lot of money left over. If they use $50,000 of that to secure space every year and materials, then they still have $100,000 that those teachers are making every year just to teach 10 children, as opposed to having a class of 30 children and making only like $40,000 a year. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just a winning idea. If we can issue these checks to the children, then the ones who are going to be the hugest winners, on top of the children being the winners here, are the teachers, because they're going to be getting paid much more than they get paid now. The things that the Corey DeAngelis puts out that I love because it's not knowledge that I immediately have, is he shows the increase in spending that we do in education and who benefits from those the most. We have the children, we have the teachers, and we have the administrators. The ones who benefit the most in the increase of spending that we give towards education are the administrators. They are the ones that these public schools are very top heavy. They have all these administrators, superintendents, principals, and all these people collecting these big paychecks, and then the teachers getting crumbs. So all of that bureaucratic nonsense is eliminated with the idea of microschooling. And if there's $150,000 for the teacher, there's $150,000 for them to do whatever they need. And whatever is left over is their salary. They could have $120,000 left over for teaching 10 children for the year. Like, to me, that's amazing. Like, that's empowering for everyone. Everyone wins in this situation. Society wins. The children get more personalized care with small classes, and teachers get the pay that they deserve. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of Corey's ideas.
Yeah, and finally, we will get to see some market mechanism at play in the education sector, right?
Yeah.
See what kind of educational formulas or curriculum are actually favored by the populace, and what kind of teaching styles or teachers themselves can advance and get ahead of their peers.
Right, absolutely, and now it's the parents calling the shots, and probably even the children to some extent. But now that the schools have to compete, they have to compete with other schools now. And the current model, whatever zip code you live in, that determines what school you go to, and the schools always have guaranteed students. So you could teach the students anything you want. You have no other choice to send them anywhere else. But now, if there's a competitive market on education, and we eliminate the public institutions, now, like, what really is going to be the guiding factor is what you teach in your school. And so you're going to have good ideas. You're going to have to have the ideas that the parents want their kids to be taught, essentially. And those are the schools are going to have to compete for those students, and they're going to have to teach accordingly. So there's just so many pluses for this idea all the way around. I can't imagine why we would be doing what we're doing right now, honestly. Well, I know why we do it, because why would the state want to give up that much power? Education is a rich pipeline for them to raise up obedient people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, David, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Discussion. Actually, a final question for you.
Yes.
For the next decade in the States, let's say the 20s that we are in, what is your prognosis? Is it an optimistic one? Is it a pessimistic one? Or do you yourself got to think about emigrating somewhere else?
I definitely have a plan B. I'll just say that. I don't see things going too good. My prognosis would be that things are going to get much worse before they get better. And I don't know exactly what that's going to entail, but I know that there's going to be a huge power struggle between, and not between Democrats and Republicans, but between authoritarians and libertarians. And so the next 10 years, I think they are going to be a bit grim, because I really believe that things are going to get much worse before they get better. And if it gets to the point where I have to leave for my family's safety, I hope it doesn't get to that point. I do have another place to go in my family's ancestral country of El Salvador.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and life is much cheaper out there. It's a little dangerous, but much cheaper.
Well, if you can be armed, you can protect yourself.
Oh, yes, for sure.
I'll let you do that, but
yeah.
Well, anyways, David, thanks for your time. I'll put your Twitter handle in the description.
Sounds good.
Do you use anything other than Twitter?
No, not at the moment. No.
All right.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, you as well. Yeah, you offered us a lot of insight. Thanks for that, David.
Happy to help. Yep. All right.
Good night.